My stepsister brought a disgusting cake to my birthday party. I served it at her wedding. I was turning 25 and decided to throw myself a proper birthday dinner at a downtown Italian restaurant. I'd been planning it for 2 months, invited 30 people, paid a deposit, and chose a special menu. My mom remarried 3 years ago to Phil, who had a daughter named Kendra. She was 28 and thought she was better than everyone because she went to culinary school for 1 semester before dropping out. Okay, so listen, you are not going to believe what happened. Have you ever felt such deep, burning rage that you spent 6 months meticulously planning someone's downfall, only to realize the sweet taste of revenge actually leaves you feeling hollow and sick to your stomach? Because that's my story, and trust me, it involves a wedding, a biohazard cake, and a family feud that almost tore us all apart. So, this whole mess started with my 25th birthday party. My stepsister, Kendra, wasn't even on the original guest list. Honestly, we've always had a complicated relationship. She works at a sandwich shop now, but insists on calling herself a chef and food artist. My dad, Phil, bless his heart, asked me to include her for family unity. Big mistake. The day before the party, Kendra calls me, demanding to know what she can contribute. I told her, politely, that everything was handled. We had a beautiful chocolate cake coming from a fancy restaurant's pastry chef, all paid for. But no, Kendra, in her infinite wisdom, declares that my choice is boring and she's bringing something better. I specifically told her not to. The restaurant was taking care of everything. She just brushed me off, saying, "You'll thank me later," and hung up. I just remember standing there, phone still in my hand, thinking, oh, for the love of God. The night of my birthday, everything was perfect. The food was incredible. Everyone was laughing. Truly a great vibe. And then, 2 hours late, the doors burst open. Kendra, striding in, carrying this enormous box like she was delivering the Magna Carta. She made a grand announcement. "I've brought the real birthday cake." She elbowed past the servers, pushed her way to the main table, and plunked her box right down. I tried to interject. "Kendra, I have a cake coming." But she cut me off, loudly proclaiming, "Nobody wants corporate restaurant cake when they can have my artisanal creation." Then she opened the box and pulled out the most disgusting thing I had ever seen. It was supposed to be a cake, but it looked like a gray-green pile of mud. She announced, with immense pride, that it was a matcha spirulina-activated charcoal cake with fermented durian frosting and cricket protein flour. Before she even finished, the smell hit us like a physical blow. I mean, it was vile, like rotting garbage mixed with gym socks, but 10 times worse. People recoiled. My friend, Amy, actually gagged. Kendra, meanwhile, just smiled, claiming it was a sophisticated flavor profile that uncultured palates wouldn't appreciate. She said she'd made it specifically to educate everyone's taste buds because my friends clearly ate too much processed food. She then, without missing a beat, started cutting massive slices, pushing aside the plates meant for the real cake. The servers tried to stop her, but she just waved them off. "I'm family. I know what I'm doing." Then the ultimate power move. She snatched the microphone from the DJ and, in a booming voice, declared that everyone had to try her cake before my basic chocolate one. She said it would be an insult to her as family if we didn't eat what she'd worked so hard on. She actually stood there, watching, making sure people took bites. Poor Amy. She took one tiny bite and bolted to the bathroom to throw up. Kendra just scoffed. Amy's being dramatic. Probably food poisoning from the restaurant's cheap ingredients. My mom, bless her polite heart, tried to take a bite but couldn't swallow it. Even my dad, Phil, the poor guy, managed to choke down a whole piece, and he looked like he was genuinely dying. But it didn't stop there. Kendra then pulled out her phone and started live-streaming, babbling about elevating pedestrian tastes at a sad, suburban family event. She actually told her followers I'd begged her to save my boring party with real food. She walked around, filming people's disgusted faces, calling their reactions experiencing flavor complexity for the first time. The restaurant manager, clearly at his wit's end, asked her to stop. She just told him his establishment served garbage, and her cake was the only edible thing there. She even demanded he comp our entire meal because we'd suffered through his substandard food before her cake arrived. And then the absolute kicker. When the restaurant finally brought out my beautiful chocolate cake, she grabbed it and, in front of everyone, threw it in the trash, saying she was doing everyone a favor. My birthday was utterly ruined. People left early because the stench of her durian cake had contaminated the entire private dining room. The restaurant had to close that section for deep cleaning, and they charged me extra for the biohazard cleanup because the fermented durian had leaked onto their carpet. Of course, Kendra later posted about how she'd tried to bring culture to basic people who couldn't appreciate it. Fast forward 6 months. Kendra gets engaged to this guy, Curtis, who apparently thinks her food experiments are genius. She planned this whole fancy wedding at a country club, bragging about a 7-course tasting menu she'd personally designed. Then the ultimate insult, a save the date with a note saying she expected a better attitude than at my birthday. That was it. That was the moment. I offered to make her wedding cake as a gift. She was shocked, then thrilled, declaring I'd finally recognized her influence on my palate. I insisted it be a surprise. She naturally agreed, wanting to be amazed. For 3 days leading up to the wedding, I worked. I made her exact cake. Matcha spirulina activated charcoal base, fermented durian frosting, cricket protein flour. But I took it further. I made it 10 times worse. I added fish sauce to the frosting, blue cheese to the filling. It was a masterpiece of pure, unadulterated nastiness. Wedding day. I arrived early with my creation, told the venue staff it was a surprise from the bride's sister, and bribed a server $200 to make sure my cake came out instead of whatever they'd planned. When cake cutting time came, they wheeled out my magnificent 4-tiered, gray-green nightmare. The smell. Oh, the smell. It filled the ballroom instantly. Kendra's face went white. Curtis's face beside her changed in slow motion, confusion melting into something harder as the stink truly hit him. His nose wrinkled, and he actually took a step back from the cake table. Kendra grabbed his arm, but her eyes were locked on me across the ballroom. I watched her brain work. The gray-green layers, the stench, the exact same disgusting creation she'd forced on my birthday party just 6 months ago. Her mouth opened, but nothing came out at first, just this strangled sound. And then she found her voice, shrill and panicked, screaming, "This isn't the cake I ordered! Someone made a terrible mistake." Guests nearest the cake were backing away, hands clamped over their noses. A few people actually gagged. I stayed near the back wall, perfectly positioned to watch it all unfold. Kendra's face went through an entire journey, shock, then recognition, then pure, burning rage. She realized exactly what I'd done. Her face turned crimson. She spun around, scanning the crowd, until she spotted me. She pointed one shaking finger in my direction and shrieked, "What the hell did you bring to my wedding?" I started walking toward the front of the ballroom, slowly, deliberately letting everyone watch me. People parted to let me through. The room got incredibly quiet, save for some muffled coughing from guests struggling with the smell. I walked right up to the cake table, where Kendra stood in her white dress, looking like she might actually explode. And I smiled, calmly, pleasantly. "Oh, Kendra," I said, my voice sweet, "I brought your signature recipe. The same matcha spirulina activated charcoal cake with fermented durian frosting and cricket protein flour that you created specially for my 25th birthday party." I paused. I remembered how you told everyone it was a sophisticated flavor profile that would educate our basic palates. So, I just wanted to share that same gift with you on your special day. Kendra's face went completely white again, like all the blood had drained out. More guests started covering their noses, moving towards the exits. Someone near the front actually ran outside. I pulled out my phone and started swiping through photos, holding it up so people nearby could see. Pictures from my birthday party 6 months ago. Kendra forcing slices of gray-green cake onto plates. Amy running towards the bathroom. The horrified restaurant staff. Phil choking down a piece, looking like death warmed over. Curtis snatched my phone and stared at the pictures, his face darkening with each swipe. He asked, his voice tight and angry, what was happening and why the cake smelled like actual rotting garbage. An older woman in a fancy purple dress pushed through the crowd. Curtis's mother, Antella, I realized. She looked at the cake, then at Kendra, then at me, and demanded to know who approved this disgusting thing. Her voice had this cold authority that made everyone shut up. Kendra started babbling, misunderstanding. She must be confused. Someone switched the cakes as a prank. I held up my phone again, showing more pictures. Kendra live streaming at my party, Kendra throwing my real chocolate cake in the trash, screenshots of her social media posts calling my party sad and suburban, claiming I begged her to save my boring event. Antella snatched my phone again, scrolling through everything, her expression growing colder and colder. I raised my voice so everyone in the ballroom could hear me clearly. 6 months ago, I announced. Kendra insisted this sophisticated flavor profile would educate everyone's palates at my birthday party. She said she specifically made it to teach my friends about real food because we apparently ate too much processed garbage. I explained how she'd forced everyone to try it before my actual cake, how she'd live-streamed the whole thing calling us uncultured, how she'd thrown my real cake in the trash. I just wanted to give her the same amazing gift on her special day. I finished, my voice calm and pleasant, since she'd been so generous with mine. The ballroom erupted in whispers. Guests who'd been at my birthday party started nodding, confirming the story to people nearby. Kendra's face turned from white to a deep, humiliated crimson that spread down her neck. Her hands shook. She tried to speak, but only angry sputtering sounds came out. Curtis stared at her like he'd never seen her before. My dad, Phil, came running over, his face panicked. He started saying there'd been a mistake, that we should just remove the cake and move on. His voice was fake, cheerful, like he could smooth everything over. But Antella cut him off, her voice sharp as broken glass. Kendra, she demanded, did you really do this to your stepsister's birthday party? Is this disgusting cake disaster real? Phil opened his mouth, but several guests from my party spoke over him, confirming every detail. One of my friends called out that she'd thrown up from trying Kendra's cake. Another guy mentioned the deep clean because the durian leaked everywhere. A woman near the back confirmed Kendra's social media posts. Antella's face hardened with each confirmation. She looked at Kendra with a cold disappointment that was somehow worse than anger. Curtis stood frozen, looking between his bride and the nightmare cake, his brain visibly struggling to process. Kendra's maid of honor, Sabina, rushed over, put her arm around Kendra, and started loudly defending her, calling it passion and a generous gesture. She glared at me like I was the villain. But Curtis turned to Sabina, his voice quiet, dangerous. Why have I never heard about any of this? He asked. Why has my fiancé never mentioned ruining her stepsister's birthday party? Why am I finding out at my own wedding that my bride forced disgusting food on people and mocked them online? Sabina's mouth opened and closed, but she had no answer. The photographer kept snapping away, capturing everything: the cake, Kendra's tear-stained face, Curtis's angry expression, guests covering their noses. The camera clicks were incredibly loud in the tense silence. More people were edging toward the exits now. The smell was getting worse as the cake sat there, the durian frosting probably warming up. An event coordinator appeared with 2 security guards. He introduced himself as Bradley, and in a professional but firm voice, said the cake needed to be removed immediately. Guests were complaining, threatening to leave. The guards moved toward the cake. Kendra made this horrible sobbing sound, grabbing Curtis's arm, mascara streaking down her face. She begged him to do something to fix this. But Curtis just stood there, completely frozen, staring at the gray-green cake like it represented everything wrong in his life. He looked at Kendra, then the cake, then back at Kendra, his face utterly blank. The security guards carefully picked up the cake stand and carried it toward the kitchen. The smell moved with it like a cloud, and people actually parted to let them through faster. Half the ballroom was empty now, guests standing out on the terrace, gulping fresh air. My stepsister Margot, Phil's wife, grabbed my arm hard and dragged me toward a corner. She hissed, "How could you be so cruel? You've completely ruined Kendra's wedding day. What is wrong with you, doing something this horrible?" Her face was red, her eyes blazing. Something hot and angry rose in my chest. I yanked my arm away. Where was this energy 6 months ago, Margot, when Kendra ruined my birthday? I demanded. Why didn't you care when she forced disgusting food on my friends and made them sick? Why was it fine when Kendra cost me extra cleaning fees and threw my real cake in the trash? Why did she get to humiliate me in front of everyone I cared about? But I'm the villain for giving her the same experience. Margot's mouth opened, but nothing came out. She just stood there, hands still raised, looking like she wanted to argue, but couldn't find the words. Her face went from angry to confused, then maybe shame. Curtis's best man, Quentin, appeared near the cake table, quietly suggesting they had a backup cake, a simple white one, and they could try to salvage the reception. But Kendra was full-on hysterical now, sobbing so hard her whole body shook. "My wedding is destroyed," she wailed. "Everything is ruined." Her hair was coming loose, her makeup streaked. She looked nothing like the perfect bride from an hour ago. More than half the ballroom had emptied out. Phil moved toward Kendra, wrapping his arms around her, making soothing sounds while she cried into his shoulder. But over her head, he was glaring at me with an expression of pure anger, accusing. I felt this weird twist in my stomach that wasn't satisfaction. I'd imagined feeling triumphant, watching Kendra get exactly what she'd given me. But instead there was just this hollow, sick feeling. Curtis stood frozen a moment longer, then turned and walked straight out to the terrace without a word. His shoulders were rigid, his hands clenched. Antella watched him go, then looked back at Kendra, still sobbing in Phil's arms, her face cold and furious. She followed Curtis outside, her purple dress swishing. I stood there in the corner with Margot, silent beside me, watching Phil try to comfort his daughter while the wedding reception fell apart. The venue staff quickly brought out a plain, white sheet cake. It looked basic, boring, but at least it didn't smell like rotting fish mixed with gym socks. Bradley, the coordinator, was directing staff to open the terrace doors wider to air out the ballroom. The lingering stench was still making people cover their noses. The emergency cake sat there, sad and inadequate. The DJ had stopped the music. The ballroom was eerily quiet, save for awkward murmuring. Phil, Kendra, and Sabina eventually retreated toward a hallway leading to the bathrooms. I could still hear Kendra's cries echoing down the hall. I felt sick. This was probably already going viral. Someone's aunt loudly asked if they should serve the emergency cake. Bradley just shook his head. "We'll wait." Wait for what? Kendra was having a breakdown. Curtis was questioning his life. The reception was over. I stood in my corner, the hollow, sick feeling growing worse. Margot, beside me, was staring at the closed bathroom door, her face sad and worried. More guests left. The ballroom emptied out. Then Leia, my friend, appeared next to me. She touched my arm, her voice quiet, concerned. "Are you okay? The revenge was perfect, but you look miserable." I tried to speak, but my throat was tight. She pulled me further into the corner. "Are you really okay? You look like you're about to cry." I told her, I thought I'd feel good, Leia, watching Kendra get what she deserved. I'd been planning this for 6 months, imagining her face. But now that it's happened, I just feel hollow and kind of sick, watching her completely fall apart. It's not satisfying at all. Leia nodded slowly like she understood. Revenge never feels as good as people think it will. She squeezed my arm. You're not a bad person, but you might have taken things too far. I already knew it, but hearing her say it out loud made the sick feeling worse. We stood in silence. The ballroom felt huge and empty. Curtis came back inside through the terrace doors. All confusion and horror were gone, replaced by a cold, tired disappointment. He walked straight through the middle of the ballroom, ignoring everyone. Then his eyes landed on me. My stomach dropped. He started walking toward me. I wanted to run, but my feet wouldn't move. Margot stepped slightly in front of me, but Curtis walked right past her. He stopped 3 feet away and just looked at me for a long moment, his jaw tight, his eyes hard. I need to speak with both you and Kendra. Privately, he said, his voice flat, cold. Right now. We're going to talk about what the hell just happened. I nodded. What else could I do? He asked where Kendra was. Margot said the bathroom. Curtis turned and walked toward the hallway. I followed, feeling everyone's eyes on me. He knocked hard on the women's bathroom door. Phil's voice came from inside. Curtis said it was him and they needed to talk. Silence. Then a click. Phil opened the door part way, looking stressed. Curtis said he wanted everyone in a private room right now. Phil started to argue, but Curtis cut him off. My wedding reception is destroyed. My mother just spent $30,000 on an event that's falling apart. Everyone involved is going to sit down and talk. His voice was still flat, but the anger was simmering beneath. Phil nodded, saying he'd get Kendra. Curtis found Bradley, and soon we were in a small, beige conference room. Curtis sat at the head of the table, arms crossed, his face cold and disappointed. I realized he was a genuinely good person who didn't deserve any of this. He didn't deserve his wedding turned into a revenge spectacle. He didn't ask for his bride and her stepsister to explode in some stupid war on his special day. I sat 3 chairs away, staring at the table. After a few minutes, Phil came in, supporting Kendra. She looked utterly destroyed. Her dress was wrinkled and stained, her hair half fallen, her face blotchy and red, makeup smeared. Sabina was behind them, but Curtis held up a hand. This is just family. Sabina looked offended, but backed out. Margot came in last and sat next to me. Phil helped Kendra into a chair across from Curtis. She wouldn't look at anyone, just stared at her lap, tears dripping onto her dress. Phil sat next to her, hand on her shoulder. Curtis looked around at all of us, his face hard. Then, quietly but cutting through the room, he asked, "What the hell is wrong with both of you?" No one spoke. Kendra cried silently. I couldn't look at him. He said he loved Kendra, wanted to marry her, but had no idea she deliberately ruined someone's birthday. He was horrified. I thought public humiliation at his wedding was appropriate revenge. He looked exhausted and hurt. For the first time, I felt genuinely ashamed. The sick, hollow feeling in my stomach twisted into something much worse. Curtis continued. He'd spent the last 20 minutes trying to process it. His mother was furious. Half their guests had left. The reception was basically over. He didn't know what to think about either of us. Kendra finally spoke, her voice choked and wet from crying. I was just trying to help. Her party was boring. I brought a special cake to make it more interesting. Curtis's face went from exhausted to furious. He asked if she seriously didn't see the problem with forcing her food experiments on people who explicitly said no. She threw away the cake I paid for, he said, turning to me, made my guests sick and cost me extra cleaning fees. Kendra tried to argue. People just didn't understand sophisticated flavors. Curtis laughed, a humorless sound. You think that's the issue? Phil jumped in. Both my girls got carried away. We're family. Families forgive each other. But Margot cut him off. Phil, you've been making excuses for Kendra's behavior for years, and it needs to stop. Her voice was sharp and firm. Phil looked shocked. Margot went on. Kendra forced disgusting food on people at a party she wasn't even supposed to attend. Threw away the real cake, live-streamed the disaster, and insulted everyone. That wasn't passion or artistic expression, Kendra, Margot said. It was selfish and cruel. Phil tried to argue, but Margot continued. I shouldn't have ruined the wedding, but Kendra needed to take responsibility for starting this whole mess. The room went quiet again. Kendra's breathing was still uneven. Curtis was watching me now, waiting. I knew I had to say something. My voice came out shaky. I cleared my throat, while Kendra started it. I took things too far by ruining her wedding day. My voice cracked, tears starting in my eyes. I was so angry for 6 months that I didn't think about how this would hurt Curtis or what it would do to our family. I just wanted Kendra to feel what I felt, but I didn't consider all the other people who'd get hurt. Curtis nodded slowly, but didn't say anything. Kendra was crying harder. Then, suddenly, she spoke, so quietly I almost didn't hear her. I knew the birthday cake was disgusting. Her voice was small. I knew people hated it, but my pride wouldn't let me back down. She confessed she'd spent years trying to prove she was a real chef, even though she dropped out of culinary school. She wanted people to take her seriously. When people rejected the cake, I felt like they were rejecting me. Her whole body shook. I knew you were right to be mad, but I couldn't admit it before. Phil's face had gone soft and sad. He squeezed Kendra's shoulder, no longer trying to defend her. Curtis stood up suddenly, his chair scraping loud. I need time to think. He walked out, without looking at any of us. The door clicked shut. We sat in horrible silence. Then Antella appeared in the doorway, her face like stone. I'm taking my son home. The reception is over. She looked at both Kendra and me with pure disgust. You should both be ashamed for turning my son's wedding day into your personal drama. She left too, her heels clicking down the hallway. The venue staff started clearing tables. People avoided looking at us. Kendra sat at the head table, her white dress now streaked with gray-green. Her veil hung crooked. Her makeup ran in dark tracks. She wasn't crying anymore, just staring at nothing. Curtis's empty chair sat next to her. I stood near the wall, feeling something heavy settle in my chest. This wasn't just payback. I'd wrecked her wedding day. I'd hurt Curtis, who never did anything to me. I'd made his mom pay for a disaster. The hollow feeling in my stomach got worse. A server wheeled past me with the remains of my revenge cake, and the smell made me feel sick. Phil appeared, put his hand on Kendra's shoulder. She didn't move. He helped her stand. She wobbled. Margot came over to me, her face tired and disappointed. We walked to the parking lot. Phil's car was already pulling away with Kendra. I got in my car, Margot next to me. We drove in complete silence for 10 minutes. Finally, Margot spoke quietly. I'm disappointed in both of you, but especially in you. You should have been the bigger person. What Kendra did was awful, but what you did was planned and calculated. That makes it worse, somehow. I thought you were more mature. I gripped the steering wheel tighter. The next 3 days felt wrong. I thought I'd feel satisfied, justified. Instead, I just felt worse. I kept seeing Kendra's face, Curtis walking out. I called in sick. Leia came over. I told her the revenge didn't fix anything. I'm still mad about my birthday party, but now I also feel guilty about the wedding. She listened without judging. I spent 6 months imagining Kendra's face, and in my head it felt good. But in real life, it just felt mean. Leia asked if I regretted it. I don't know, I said. Kendra deserved to know how it felt, but Curtis didn't deserve what happened. Leia nodded. Revenge usually hurts more people than just the target. A few days later, my phone rang. Kendra. Her voice was rough, broken. Curtis had called, asking for space. She was crying again. Then, choked and quiet, she said, "I'm sorry about your birthday." She knew the cake was disgusting. She should have listened. "Sorry about throwing away my cake. Sorry about the live stream." Her voice cracked. I sat there, feeling even worse. This wasn't the defensive Kendra. This was genuinely broken. I told her I was sorry too. She cried harder and hung up. A week after the wedding, Phil called. Family meeting. His voice was serious, tired. I drove to their house. Kendra's car was already there. Everyone was in the living room. Silence. The clock ticked. Margot finally broke it. "We need to actually talk about what happened, instead of pretending everything is fine. Our family has a problem with avoiding conflict until it explodes." Kendra stared at her hands. Phil shifted. Margot continued. "Both Kendra and I had hurt each other badly, and we needed to address it." More silence. Then Kendra started, shaky. She admitted she'd always felt bad about dropping out of culinary school. She overcompensated by forcing her food opinions on everyone. She wanted people to think she was talented, knowledgeable, even though she only lasted one semester. Ruining my birthday was wrong. She never apologized or offered to pay for the damage. She looked at me. "I'm sorry." It sounded real this time. I took a deep breath. My voice unsteady. Kendra started the conflict, but I escalated it way beyond reasonable. I hurt Curtis, who didn't deserve any of this. "I'm sorry for ruining your wedding day." Kendra wiped her eyes. Phil cleared his throat. He admitted he'd enabled Kendra's behavior because he felt guilty about her parents' divorce. He wanted to support her dreams, but went too far making excuses. Margot put her hand on his arm. Supporting someone means helping them grow, not excusing bad behavior. You've been protecting Kendra from consequences instead of helping her learn. Phil nodded, looking at Kendra. "I'm sorry for not holding you accountable." The room was quiet again. A different kind of quiet. Kendra broke it. "What happens now with Curtis?" Her voice was small, scared. Phil said that was between them. She needed to take real accountability with Curtis, not make excuses. Curtis deserved honesty and actual change. Kendra nodded. Margot added that if Kendra wanted to save the relationship, she'd have to do real work. Therapy, truly changing how she treated people. Kendra said she would do whatever it took. She loved Curtis. 3 days later, Kendra texted me. Curtis agreed to meet for coffee. I waited all afternoon. Finally, she called. He still loved her, but needed to see real changes. He wanted her to go to therapy. He needed time to trust her again, after seeing how she'd treated me and how I'd treated her. He was hurt that their wedding became about our drama. Kendra's voice was steadier now, but still sad. He gave her a chance, but she had to earn it back. I told her I hoped it worked out, and I meant it. A week later, Kendra texted again. Could we meet without our parents? I agreed. We met at a coffee shop. She slid an envelope across the table. Inside, a check for $800. It covers the extra cleaning fees from your birthday, plus the cost of the restaurant cake I threw away. Her voice was quiet, steady. She looked me in the eye. I'm sorry for ruining your birthday party. I never apologized or offered to make things right financially. I realized how terrible my behavior was. I folded the check. I took a breath. I need to apologize too. I'm sorry for the wedding disaster. I'll pay for any extra costs my revenge caused. Kendra shook her head. Curtis's mom paid for everything. The money wasn't the real problem, she said. The damage to my relationship with Curtis, that's the actual price I'm paying. We drank coffee in silence. Then Kendra started talking, and didn't stop for 10 minutes. She'd been jealous of me for years. I finished college, got a stable career. She was stuck at a sandwich shop. Watching me succeed made her feel like a failure. That's why she always tried to prove she knew more about food. It was the one area she thought she could be better than me. I sat there, surprised by her openness. I'd never thought about what drove her. I just assumed she was naturally difficult. I told her her dismissive attitude made me feel invisible in my own family, like she didn't care about my feelings. Kendra's face changed. She looked genuinely sad. She'd never thought about it that way. She was so focused on being right about food, she didn't consider how her actions affected others. She thought if people appreciated her taste, they'd respect her. She realized now, forcing her opinions just made people dislike her. 2 weeks went by with texts. She told me Curtis agreed to couples counseling. First session went better than expected. Therapist was helping them talk without fighting. He was slowly warming up, though still hurt. The therapist wanted them twice a week. She sounded hopeful, but terrified of losing him. Then Margot called. Dinner. Phil and Kendra were there. After dinner, Margot suggested Kendra and I do joint therapy. I felt immediate resistance. Kendra looked uncomfortable. Phil jumped in. We'll be family for life. We need to find a way to get along that doesn't involve destroying each other's events. Margot had found a family therapist specializing in blended family conflicts. An opening next week. Kendra and I looked at each other. Neither of us wanted to, but we both nodded. I'd go if Kendra would. She agreed. The following Tuesday, in a small office with beige walls. The therapist, a woman in her 50s, we took turns describing everything. She listened. When we finished, she said there was a clear pattern. Kendra violated my boundaries. I stewed in resentment, then exploded with revenge. Neither was healthy. Kendra's behavior was controlling. My response was passive until it became aggressively destructive. We both needed better communication skills. Homework. When something bothered us, say it immediately. Kendra needed to stop bulldozing. I needed to stop planning elaborate revenge. Direct, honest communication, even when uncomfortable. We left. Kendra asked if therapy would help. I said I didn't know, but it was worth trying. Over the next month, Kendra started taking real cooking classes at the community college. She wasn't trying to prove anything this time. She genuinely enjoyed cooking. Dropping out made her defensive, pretending she knew everything because she was embarrassed. The classes were helping her realize how much she still had to learn. She sounded different, less defensive, more excited. I started seeing my own therapist separately. Anger management, conflict resolution. I talked about the revenge fantasy, how it consumed me for 6 months, how hollow the victory was. My therapist said revenge rarely brings satisfaction. I needed better coping strategies. Holding on to resentment poisoned my own life. I needed to express feelings in the moment, set boundaries immediately, not let things build until I exploded. The wedding cake wasn't just revenge. It was 6 months of rage compressed into 4 tiers of disgusting frosting. 2 weeks after our family meeting, Curtis called Kendra, asking to meet. She came back looking exhausted but hopeful. He still loved her, but the wedding disaster made him question everything. He wanted to postpone their Italy honeymoon, focus on couples therapy instead. She agreed, begging for another chance. He laid out conditions. She needed to stop bulldozing, actually listen when someone said no. Her food experiments couldn't be weapons anymore. If she couldn't respect boundaries with his family and friends, their marriage wouldn't survive. Kendra called me crying after that. But for once, no excuses. She just kept saying she understood and would do better. Thanksgiving, for months after the wedding. Mom invited everyone. The atmosphere felt different. Kendra arrived with a normal green bean casserole. She'd actually texted the group chat asking about dietary restrictions. Phil looked shocked when she placed the dish on the counter and asked where people wanted it. No grand announcements about elevated flavors. Just a regular casserole. We sat down. Conversation was surface level, awkward, but nobody fought. Kendra complimented Mom's turkey. Phil asked about my job. Curtis talked about work. I watched Kendra serve small portions, actually eating what others brought instead of critiquing everything. The meal ended without drama, a massive achievement. 2 weeks later, at another family dinner, Phil started to jump in when Kendra mentioned work stress, forming his usual excuses. Then he caught himself. He paused, looked at Kendra, and asked if she'd talk to her manager about adjusting her schedule instead of just complaining. Kendra looked startled. Phil never pushed her to solve her own problems. She stammered. Phil said being direct about needs wasn't the same as being difficult. Mom's eyebrows went up. I watched the exchange. It was uncomfortable watching Phil struggle against decades of habit, but he kept redirecting himself. Kendra looked like she didn't know how to respond to this version of her dad. Christmas. Curtis joined us, more relaxed, laughing at Phil's bad jokes, helping with dishes. After dinner, he found me loading the dishwasher. Quietly, he said therapy was helping. He and Kendra were learning to communicate without her getting defensive or him shutting down. Slow work, but progress. Then he said something that surprised me. He thanked me for apologizing about the wedding, even though what I did was terrible. He said it showed him our family could actually acknowledge mistakes instead of sweeping everything under the rug. I told him I was genuinely sorry. He nodded. That's why he was willing to keep working with Kendra. January brought unexpected news. Kendra called, sounding genuinely excited. The sandwich shop promoted her to assistant manager. 5 years, finally recognized for consistent work. What shocked me was how she talked about it. No mentions of chef or food artist. No complaints about the job being beneath her. Just proud of earning it through hard work. Calm confidence. She stopped telling people she went to culinary school because it felt like lying about who she actually was. I told her I was happy for her, and I meant it. Our next joint therapy session, the counselor asked what we'd learned. Kendra went first. She hurt me badly, never apologizing or taking responsibility. She was defensive because she was ashamed of dropping out and working at A. Sandwich shop. My turn. I hurt her badly by destroying her wedding day. Planning revenge for 6 months wasn't healthy. I should have confronted her directly. The therapist nodded. Real progress. The work was slow, uncomfortable. Rebuilding trust takes time and consistent effort. We couldn't skip the difficult middle part. We both nodded. She suggested we could wrap up our joint session soon. We had developed the tools. We scheduled one final session. 2 weeks later, Kendra texted me a screenshot, an acceptance email. She'd applied to a part-time culinary certificate program at the community college. Evenings and weekends, so she could keep working. She called, genuinely excited, not trying to prove she was better or make up for dropping out. She was doing it for herself. She loved cooking and wanted to get better. No pretension. Just honest enthusiasm. I told her I was proud. She talked about the classes. Her attitude was completely different. Humble, eager to learn. It made me happy for her in a way I didn't expect. Curtis and Kendra left for their Italy honeymoon in early May. 2 weeks. Tanned, relaxed, happier than I'd seen them since before the wedding. Photos of the Colosseum, gondola rides, tiny streets. Kendra talked about the food, meals at little family restaurants, a cooking class in Tuscany. But she wasn't pretentious or judgmental. She just shared with genuine excitement. Curtis jumped in with stories. They seemed reconnected, solid. The trip was exactly what they needed. Watching them, I felt good about how far we'd all come. June. Phil hosted a family barbecue. Warm Saturday. We sat on the deck, eating burgers. Phil stood up, cleared his throat. He wanted to thank Kendra and me for doing the hard work. His voice got thick. He'd been so scared after the wedding that our family was broken. Watching us go to therapy, have honest conversations, become sisters, made him grateful and proud. Margot added she was proud of how we'd grown, learned to communicate instead of letting resentment build or bulldozing. Kendra reached over and squeezed my hand under the table. I squeezed back. Not a huge moment, no dramatic declarations. Just a quiet acknowledgement that we'd done something difficult and come out better for it. Over the following weeks, Kendra and I kept meeting for lunch. We slowly established clearer boundaries. She started asking before bringing food to family events. I practiced speaking up right away if something bothered me. We actually talked through our new system at one lunch. She'd ask permission. I'd say yes or no honestly. If I had a problem, I'd tell her directly. If she felt dismissed, she'd say so. It wasn't perfect. We still had awkward moments where old patterns tried to creep back in. But we caught ourselves faster, could laugh or talk it through. The boundaries felt functional, respectful. We'd finally figured out how to be family members who actually cared about each other. 6 months after the wedding disaster, our family dynamic shifted into something I never expected. Dinner at Phil and Margot's every other week. Nobody walked on eggshells. Kendra brought food sometimes, but always asked first. I spoke up immediately when something bothered me. Phil caught himself making excuses for Kendra, stopped mid-sentence, and asked her to take responsibility. Margot stopped trying to smooth everything over. We recognized the patterns now, could stop them before they exploded. Looking back, I realized the revenge didn't fix anything at all. Serving that horrible cake at Kendra's wedding just created more damage, hurt innocent people like Curtis. What actually fixed things was the painful process that came after. We had to sit in therapy, face our issues honestly, hear how our actions hurt each other, and take real accountability. We had to learn to communicate directly. The work was uncomfortable, slow, sometimes felt impossible. But it changed how we related to each other in ways that actually lasted. Kendra and I would never be best friends who shared everything. We were too different and had hurt each other too badly for that kind of closeness. What we built instead was a respectful sister relationship with clear boundaries and genuine care. She asked before bringing food to events. I spoke up immediately. We had lunch together every few weeks and actually enjoyed the conversation. Our family gatherings were pleasant now, sometimes even fun, without the tension and drama that used to define every interaction. I felt grateful we'd done the hard work to get here, even though the path was messy and uncomfortable. So that's my story. It was brutal, messy, and honestly, the revenge wasn't what I thought it would be. Have you ever tried to get revenge on someone, only to find it didn't feel as good as you expected? Or have you learned a tough lesson about conflict and communication in your own family? Let me know in the comments below. I'm genuinely curious to hear what you all think.